Welcome to Happy Times and Places, in which I, Toby Hadoke, ask a special guest to choose a Doctor Who story and nominate their favourite things about it. I then watch the story and see if I can guess what those favourite things are.
Hi Toby, it's thanks for having me on. For the multitudes out there who don't know me, my name's Jeremy Radick, and I played Gareth in the Doctor Who TV movie. And for the past 25 years, I've been shamelessly exploiting that to get me into exciting predicaments like this. And now it's brought me here to my basement to talk to you about Inferno.
Well, welcome everybody. This is the alternative universe of Happy Times and Places, which is pretty much the same as the one where you live, except all printers work and the 6 o'clock news is presented by Russell Brand. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. Let's crack on. It's Inferno episode 5, and I would like to press play now. So, it's odd, isn't it? With I grew up thinking all Doctor Who stories were 4-parters. Isn't that odd? But they were. I did watch some of the Key to Time, but I think it was on repeats. So, Shard was cancelled. Season 17 is my first, I think, proper continuous live memory. So yeah, I thought all Doctor Who stories were 4-parters, and then occasionally they did this wacky thing of having a 2-parter when Peter Davison came along. It was only much later that I learnt about past Doctor Who that stories were longer than that, and of course, so this Inferno now is episode 5 is beginning when a lot of Doctor Who stories are finished, and hasn't actually got more story than many a Doctor Who story, but it doesn't matter because it's got enough drama and enough character and enough incident. There was a slight change in quality there. I'm sure there are whole essays to be written about the different qualities of the prints here. But it looked slightly better. The stuff that was from last episode looked slightly better than what we cut to. I'm sure there's an answer to that, but I know that this story is it does not look how it would have looked. It's got the slight sort of blur and blur is a good. Is the word that's springing to mind from the NSTC conversion. But if it wasn't for the NSTC print, we wouldn't have Inferno in colour at all. And I think the colour actually really helps with that. That's a superb model. I like a model shot, and a lot of these are smaller scale, which I did mention before, which I only discovered very recently when I was reading something about this, that all the film bits of a drill and green goo are slightly smaller models, and I love it in the 70s when you could get hit. I mean, at least he didn't hit him on the head there. He did the back of the shoulders thing, but where you could hit somebody with an iron bar and they'd be okay. So that's pretty horrible. So Stahlman is now trying to turn everyone into a Primord, which is pretty grim. And to do that thing you do in Doctor Who fights, where people do a sort of somersault in the air, which is a lovely, but which is what you can do when you've got Havoc, when you've got your action by Havoc. But yeah, the 70s have that marvelous thing, don't they? Of and it's not just Doctor Who. I used to do a thing with my friend Anton at school, where we used to do the sort of Mission Impossible thing of somebody would be guarding something and we go, "We've come to mend your telephone," and then give them a karate chop between the shoulders and knock them unconscious. But of course it's all a way of packaging violence in a child friendly way, and the back of the shoulders is sort of shorthand for head and concussion. But of course if you did actually whack somebody with an iron bar, although looking at it then for the first time, it looked like it had got got a hole in the middle. Well, I mean, obviously it wasn't a real iron bar, and it's and it's pretty grim because all those technicians are sort of they were littered about unconscious, and he's shutting the door. Now, one of the first things we knew about this story, that's Keith Ashley, that extra, who everybody loved. And he's credited as a Dalek, and he's credited in Destiny, and he's credited as a Zygon in Terror of the Zygons. He and Ronald Goff are the Zygons, and they're also the Krynoid in Seeds of Doom. And he was around for donkey's years, Keith Ashley. Somebody should have interviewed him. He's no longer with us. But the first thing we knew about, or one of the first behind-the-scenes facts that came out about this, was that Olaf Pooley didn't like the Primord makeup. And so I'd assumed that in the later episodes, it's not him. They got that they just, because it doesn't need to be him, but it actually is. It is him in the makeup, and he moaned about it apparently, and I actually don't blame him. I'm a serious actor, but I seem to recall Nick Courtney and the extras calling him Aloof Olaf, but he was. But Annika Wills said he was absolutely lovely and jolly, and maybe he was just a bit pissed off at having to dress as a gangrenous member of ZZ Top. But we will get to the Primords. I love the lighting, the noise, the sweat on everybody's faces. Theatrical sweat, by the way, is horrible stuff because it has to sort of stay there. What did I have it in? I had it in a drama I was in. I can't remember. I've had it a couple of times for telly. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's quite solid. It sort of sticky, but then sort of solidifies, and it's and it doesn't smell very nice either. It's not a comfortable thing to have on you, TV sweat. And of course, if you're doing a scene and you have actual sweat because you're under lights and stuff, like they wipe it off and mop your brow and put powder on. But these close-ups are really intense. What I'm loving this time round, actually, that wasn't so clear on the old sort of millionth generation videos, is that actually the pre-transformation Primord makeup, this sort of bluey green stuff with the sort of sharp bristly hairs on the cheeks that you only see in the big close-ups that Ian Fairbairn has here and that Walter Randall had in the earlier episodes, is actually really, really good. And it works really well in the close-ups, and actually look is one of the things that looks that thanks to the improvement of picture quality, you can see the sort of individual hairs out of his chin and his cheeks there, which are really hard and bristly looking and must have had to have been applied quite carefully. That's really effective, and that's something that struck me particularly on this viewing, because this is the first time I've seen it on a screen as big as this. I love all this stuff with Sutton, going, sod this for a game of soldiers. I love the way that the sort of world is conjured, and Liz glowering in the background there. That the picture is really well structured, and you had to do this. You had to sort of choreograph all of this stuff, while just bearing in mind, where each of the cameras would be. That picture has to work for that shot we've just had, but the reverse also has to work. So Derek Newick's positioning has to work for camera 2 and camera 3, and there's no cut between them. They're vision mixed. So, and I think that's what we underestimate a lot of the time when the pictures look good in studio, and just the groupings. Some people in the foreground and some people in the background. They're not being choreographed like you would on stage for just face on. They're being choreographed for camera to the left, camera to the right, camera straight on, and so the sort of the ballet like choreography of the movement is really important. And some directors are nothing like as exact as others. And Camfield, I think that we're still going from his camera plans. I'd like to think we are, because I think he was a much better director than Barry Letts. Barry Letts was a decent director. He was an excellent producer and a superb human being. But I'm not a huge fan of his direction, which I think is generally quite functional. But I think this is brilliantly directed. I think there's a real attention paid to what every element does to ratchet up the tension. Even from something simple like as I say, the people groupings, but also, the closeness of the camera. Derek Newick's brilliant there, because he wants to tell her the truth, but then he actually backs out of doing so because he doesn't want to upset her. I mean, that's quite, that's quite 70s paternalism, is that the man has to protect the lady from the bad news. But, the reason that it's 70s paternalism is because it's from the 1970s and it was a bit paternalistic. But they've made that a virtue in this particular element of this production, and I do buy all of this, and it's rather tender, and I love Greg. I wish I was like Greg Sutton. I wish I could wear a cravat on an oil rig and probably get my hands dirty and also be nice to a lady. I bet Greg Sutton's probably sowed his wild oats as well, and drank whiskey and played cards with the lads, and then been cool in some international bar. I don't know why I think people who work with oil was quite glamorous though, wasn't it? Because it's worth a lot of money, but also it's of the earth. So I think oil men were sexy for a bit. The lights are the lights are going down. I noticed that shot when Sutton did they're still playing at Tin Soldiers and does the mock salute. It was totally black behind him. It's the darkness is creeping in, and that was one of Camfield's laments, was that the later episodes weren't as dark as he'd have made them. But I still think they are, compared to the normal look of Doctor Who. Death is closing in here. Disaster is closing in, and I love the continual sound, the sound of the earth screaming out its rage, but the explosions and I think this has got one of the best uses of sound in the whole of Doctor Who, which I'm sure, nominate as one of my things if I haven't already. I'm struggling to remember what I chose for the first 3 episodes. I know I chose Douglas Camfield, didn't I, for 2, and the Havoc Boys for 3, and the cliffhanger for 4. Well, but then again, this has got a great cliffhanger too. I can't just choose the cliffhangers every time, because I forgot. Because the cliffhanger for 6 is pretty stonking as well. And of course Jeremy chose John Pertwee. My guest Jeremy Radick chose John Pertwee, and that was a very good choice, and I am often in danger of taking the leads for granted. And I think Pertwee was very self-conscious about his acting, because although he was a seasoned pro, he was the least experienced television drama actor of anybody in these productions, and we know he's a man of action, and we know he's a man of vehicles, and we know he's a gifted comedian who can bring a lightness of touch to it. But actually what he does most of the time in Doctor Who is he does straight dramatic stuff, and that was of all of those things, because I'm sure, you know, we think, well, it's harder to be funny, it's harder to be action and full of action, to do action, it's harder to drive and control vehicles. Well, actually, all of that stuff, that was Pertwee in his element. Most of the time playing Doctor Who, he's probably out of his comfort zone, and I think that's admirable. And because he never sort of really made a big deal of it, I think that's sometimes underestimated with Pertwee. Was that this was all, you know, this was all new to him. Whereas Sylvester McCoy, I think, is much more of a natural clown, and has that wonderful brooding sort of bird-like melancholy. But I don't think he's as comfortable with the dramatic stuff, because what we get instead is that sort of worldly eccentricity, and as I say, that sort of slight wistful sadness thing that he does so well. But he's you know, he's more comfortable with that, and certainly with the comedy. Whereas Pertwee, I think, you know, does the drama absolutely spot on. It's the unit platoon there. The Havoc platoon there. You've got Billy Horrigan in the middle with Terry Walsh and Derek Martin. Billy Horrigan, they used to call Billy Horrible, who's still around, but has never done interviews and stuff. I think he's lost his hearing. I think I may have mentioned that before, but I've said it again louder for people who couldn't hear it. That's not me being mad and forgetting things. Honest. She would have been a different character with Kate O'Mara, wouldn't she? She is a bit drippy, Petra. And I was sort of thinking, is that her fault because of that's how it's written? But actually, I can imagine Kate O'Mara doing this, and doing the same lines, but not being quite so drippy. So yeah, casting is so interesting, isn't it? Because and nowadays it's so compromised because directors aren't even really allowed to cast their stuff. It all has to go through execs and casting directors, which weren't really a thing here. I know that the BBC had their own casting sort of department and stuff, but there was no casting directors really in the way that we understand them now. A director would choose people, and sometimes their wives. But she must have been going through hell with this, because she had to carry on Sheila Dunn, making this story whilst her husband has had a heart attack. Oh, I mentioned in not a heart attack, but he was taken off the production because of he had a weak heart. I said that Douglas Camfield was 48 when he died. He wasn't. He was 52. I said in episode 3. So I'm correcting that. I'm sure I will have added an addendum. But it's because he died in 1984. Gosh, a long time ago now. Now then, how do we feel about the Primords? I mean, I already think the long hair sticking out the sleeves is a bit comical. It's no, well, no. He looks fine. And the way that this is directed with the other Primords in the background is great. I know they're not called Primords. Those close-ups are all gloriously done. And them coming through the smoke is amazing. But then they look like that. Now, they used to be a huge embarrassment to me. They aren't now. I used to have this theory about every Doctor Who story had a giant rat. That Talon's Wayne Chiang is, absolutely brilliant on almost every level, and then this terrible carpet thing comes and just destroys all the hard work done elsewhere. And I used to think of the Primords as Inferno's giant rat. This production, there's not a bad performance. The direction is great. The design is great. The story holds up. Blah blah blah. And it's got Lemmy from Motorhead after a sneezing accident as the monster. That's very well done. It's not the fact that he gets scratched. It's the fact that it takes a while and they sort of hold him and that he has to sort of beg for his life. And they scratch him and turn him into one of them, which leads to now this film sequence. So Greg Sutton runs off and Benton has to crawl to the film part of the of the complex in order to roll about and turn into a Primord, which is a great idea to do this transformation on film because you have more control over it. It means John Levine gets to show that he's really suffering and to roll around, which is really effective. It's a really good choice, and John Levine does it well. And this is good. That's the sort of blistering that's happening. I mean, you could do that mutation of the hand much better now because that was an obvious, fade from one to the other. But then he comes up and he's got stupid false teeth, and I think the killer is the black doggy nose. And yet, actually, I used to not like the sort of hair and the beard, but they're actually pretty good. It's doing a werewolf is really hard and fun. I've done Tooth and Claw for this, and a filmy friend of mine was like, you can't do hair on CGI. Well, I think that the werewolf in Tooth and Claw is absolutely magnificent, and false hair or even good wigs, are do have a lack of authenticity about them. So how do you design essentially a werewolf? That's what they are. They're essentially a werewolf. I remember when I first watched this scene, I didn't really, I never quite knew when I read about the story quite how Sir Keith Gold fitted into it. But he's got this sort of nice little subplot running through, and of course he's not in next week. So this, as far as we know, because of course Sir Keith Gold is dead, which just sounds like when it first happens. In the alternative universe, when you first hear of it, you just go, "Oh, that's But of course, actually, is Sir Keith Gold dead because Stahlman arranged something? So he got bumped off in the alternative, in Warp 2 or whatever it is. Whereas, of course, this is just a very effective way of doing it, and I like Keith James as the driver. He gets a nice, he gets a nice little bite of the cherry as a character, and it's done with great economy and efficiency, because Stallman has duped the driver into doing this thing. But of course, then we have the fact that the driver feels guilty, so he has to say, "Oh, please don't tell anyone. I'll be very grateful." Which means that he takes his eyes off the road, which means that the car crashes, and that's where we leave them. And he's not in the next episode, so has that spelled the increase in our warp's progress towards the end of the world. That nose is actually quite good in this. That's Dave Carter, you can tell. Well, can I tell? Or is it? I think that was Dave Carter because of the eyes, or was it Stallman? No, that's Stallman. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's a good choice. To have the monster leer at the camera, that's quite shocking. But again, not if he looks like, as I say, one of ZZ Top. How do we feel about the Primords? I don't know. I don't think I dislike them as much as I used to. I used to hate them. They used to spoil the story for me. I actually think they're a pretty decent makeup. I love that cliffhanger. That's brilliant. Another great cliffhanger. I actually think they're a decent makeup. And what I love... Oh, is this going to be my favourite thing? The credits, if you do not appear in our world, in Warp 1, you are credited by your rank and name from the other universe. So Greg Sutton is the same in both, but she's Dr. Petra Williams, it's Director Stallman, it's Brigade Leader Lethbridge Stewart. So Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart is not credited in this episode. Caroline John as Liz Shaw is not credited in this episode because they're not in it. Their alternative world versions are, and I like that attention to detail on the credits. You're only credited as who you are as a regular if that version appears in the episode. But yeah, warp 1 takes precedence. So I like that. That might be, I am a credit watcher. That might be my favorite thing. But yeah, I will talk about the Primords more because I'm vacillating with them. But they used to be a source of great embarrassment to me. Almost as much as my inability to use remote controller, which is why you heard the beginning of the next episode. And why did I doubt myself? It was Dave Carter, that one that woke up. And then I suddenly thought, oh, is it Olaf Pooley? No. So always trust your instincts. What is my favourite thing about that episode? I mean, I really like it, but I do really like the fact that the. Do I want to win this? Do I care if I win? I like the fact that the credits, there's such attention to detail that they don't just go Liz Shaw, Caroline John, even though that's what everybody sort of knows and expects. That they do what I talked about at length over the credits. I like the fact that I like what the credits do. Even though I mean, I'm trying to keep the sound in reserve because I think that might be my thing for the overarching thing, provided I didn't do that for episode 1, but I don't think I did. And I can't choose yet another cliffhanger, although that is a doozy of a cliffhanger. But I know we've got a doozy of a cliffhanger coming up. Yeah, I don't care. I'm the credits guy. I'm choosing the fact that the credits go to the effort of crediting people as their alternative world self. No, I can't. Can I? Is it anybody else's favourite thing? I don't care. I am. What's Jeremy saying? He's not going to say that.
Well, I'm getting quite into this now. Glad to be back and talking to you about Inferno. Once again, it is Brigade Under Leader Jeremy Radick. I still can't let you speak to the other one. He's still being interrogated, forcefully. But we did have time to sit down and watch this episode together. And once again, strangely enough, both agreed on the same things that we liked about this episode. And the answer to this one is werewolves. Yes, I know, they're called Primords, and they're green, and, they're not really exactly werewolves, but let's be honest, they're werewolves. I mean, come on. Do you have those over there in your world? Ooh, gosh, it's embarrassing if I just said werewolves all this time, and you don't even have them. But if you do have them, and they do exist, that's what those are. And they're very cool. I think the makeup is just the right side of silly. It's so wonderful. And they're green, and I don't know why. I've never seen the show before, but I have a feeling that someone involved with this very episode believed that all the best monsters were green, which is just something that I personally agree with. And I like their snarling teeth and the sound that they make, that sort of electronically modulated sound. It is so good. It's just very enjoyable, and I have to say they're being quite menacing, and there's something about this series, even though I have never seen an episode of it before, there's something about it that tells me that when monsters are involved in it, things are really cooking, and so I'm quite enjoying it now. And yes, let's just crack on to episode 6, I think, and we'll see what our favorite things about that are. I am getting a bit worried about the drilling outside. Things starts to shake a little bit. The Earth's getting a little bit unstable now. They're telling me everything's fine, but to be honest, it's looking a little apocalyptic. So hopefully we'll be back here in a few minutes and going over the next exciting episode. All right, see if you can guess what our favorite part of that will be. All
Oh well, I'm sorry that the drilling is getting a bit scarier. Well, I'm slightly glad I went for my credits thing because I wouldn't have chosen the Primords because I'm still And yes, they're never referred to on screen as Primords, but they are in the credits. So, because I wouldn't have chosen them, because I've had a love-hate relationship with them. And Jeremy mentioned the platoon under leader mentioned the teeth. I think the teeth are a bit of a problem, because they're obviously clamped on sort of comedy teeth. And I think maybe a little bit too white, and I think that whereas younger me, I think, worried more about the hair and the beards, which I actually think, and I'm now having seen a lot of screen werewolves, I actually think hold up pretty well. I think it's the teeth and the doggy nose. But then the sound of those creatures make is amazing and brilliant, and really helps to make them plausible. And things like that. I'm torn about the hunchbacks. That's a sort of way of going. So the bodies have undergone a transformation, are sort of gnarled, and it helps the actors with their movements, and the fact that they're all a bit scorched. But why is hair escaping from a wrist more comical to me than scary? It's a hard thing to do, a werewolf. I know they're not werewolves. Could they have done anything else, sort of burnt like creature? Well, no, because they're primordial, aren't they? So they're a sort of they're an echo of early man, and savagery, and primal fear. So the instincts are all right in that. It's just so hard to do. Funny, I think I like them more now than I did when I was younger. I certainly don't recoil from them instinctively like I did. I'm not ashamed of them in the way that I once was. So maybe in another 30 years' time, I'll fancy them. That's something to look forward to in my old age. When I'm instead of Googling nude photos of Roy Scammell, you have to listen to the last episode for context of that. I wasn't looking for them. I will be Googling hairy primords. Anyway, with that rather horrendous thought, I'm going to leave you on not as good apart from saying what shall we choose for episode 6. I've got to find something that isn't the cliffhanger, because I know the cliffhanger for episode 6 is great. I chose the cliffhanger for episode 4. I would happily have chosen the cliffhanger for episode 5. Inferno is a story of great cliffhangers. So in that spirit, I'm going to... You have been listening to Happy Times and Places. Thanks so much for doing so. I'm the host, Toby Hadoke. My special guest is Jeremy Radick, on Twitter at Jeremy Radick. I'd like to extend my appreciation to podcast Patreons, who are Richard Alt, Simon Ash, Tilt Ariza, Sebastian April, Kit Allen, Mark Aldridge, Peter Harness, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Ruben Herfindahl, Mark Trevor Owen, Jim Sangster, Jenny at Blue Box 99, Paul Cook, Peter Crocker, Rob Dawson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Chris Bone, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Darren Mackay, and Barry Platt. The music for this podcast is by Dave Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. I listed just some of my kind patrons there, but if you want to join that illustrious bevy and get a mention yourself, which is one of the perks, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. You also then get early releases. I mean, they're much further ahead on Patronsville, and you also get exclusive and bonus material. It starts from as little as £3 a month. You even get a 10% discount if you do a year in one go. And it's a nice place to hang out, and I'll answer any questions. And I'm very grateful that there seems to be an audience out there for this stuff. However, not everyone is inclined to or wants to subscribe or be tied in. That's absolutely fine. You can do a one-off payment at ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. But also, you might just want to digest this stuff and not invest, and that's absolutely fine. I'm just grateful to you for listening. However, what you could do, and cost you nothing apart from a little bit of your time, is to give this 5 stars wherever you receive your podcasts, and perhaps leave a line or two of review as well. It does really help. There's a heck of a lot of competition out there, and it's just nice to know that as many people are listening and liking this as possible. Thank you ever so much. I'm a stand-up comic too. I do live comedy every Tuesday in Manchester, UK at 8 p.m. at XS Malarkey Comedy Club. It's a very affordable comedy club. It runs on a non-profit making basis and has me and 4 of the best comics from around the circuit. And that's also online, because we were forced to do online shows during lockdown. They went so well, we're going to continue doing them. And that's going to be on the first Sunday of every month from the first Sunday in August 2021 at twitch.tv/XS Malarkey. Totally free, although a discretionary tip, if you like, a discretionary donation is available as an option. But again, we try to get this stuff out there for as little as possible so that everyone can enjoy it. Twitter feeds at XS Malarkey, XS Malarkey for the Comedy Club, at Toby Hadoke for me, and at Hadoke Podcasts for these podcasts. Thanks very much.